Good morning. My name is Joseph Durando, and I'm with Pat Rushing. We are both associated with Wounded Eagle UAS. We train wounded and disabled veterans how to become commercial and recreational drone operators. Today I'm going to be doing my qualification flight training, and in order to do that, I got to fulfill the Form 5U qualifications. And in this case, we will be conducting those specifics. We'll be bypassing oral discussion since there's no one here except myself who would be able to discuss it. We will be going then into pre-flight preparations. Our pre-flight preparations are such that we have our AMA card, our club card to be on this field. We're flying at the Escambia Model RC Park. I also have my FAA Part 107 recurrent test passing score on this, along with my trust card. So I'm covered in both 107 and the FAA Trust Act. We're going to be obtaining weather information. We use AccuWeather. We also have a weather station down at the north end of our field. We were down there earlier. Wind is blowing at about 3 to 5 knots, quite suitable for flight demonstrations. The weight and balance of the aircraft, we're flying the 3DR Solo, weighs approximately 2.5 pounds. It's been checked for center of gravity, mainly by just driving this middle portion, and if it sits nicely, you have a good CG. We won't be using the factory props. We're going to be using master air screw props because they're more efficient and quieter. We'll be demonstrating lance filings, but that won't be necessary since this is considered a FRIA area, or a federally recognized identification area. We don't need a lance out here. I've got many lances at a previous location we used to work at, but it's not required at this location, since this is a Class G airspace. Aircraft systems, as I said, flying the 3DR Solo with the complementing Solex software to complement the system. And we'll be putting the equipment together in order to do our pre-flight inspection and build. We also use a variety of auxiliary equipment. One of it is the Hoodman drone belt. Works like this. Fits really nicely with the 3DR Solo. They also have an attachment here to fit the DJI series of Phantom, but because Phantom is no longer available, you don't have to worry about that anymore. If you have an aircraft that has a different design, this will generally fit, and if you have to, just replace this with a 3D print, nothing to it. So air restrictions in this area are non-existent since we're in a Class G or Gulf airspace. We're sitting in the Escambia Model RC Park, and we have no incursions in our airspace. Wind is blowing out of the southwest, so we have no inbound aircraft. If there are any aircraft, will be outgoing. We're going to assemble the system, which is the 3DR Solo. It's an American-made piece of equipment. It's a very fine piece of equipment. It's a bit aged, so to speak, but it works really well. The aeronautical factors is that I'm in good shape. I've eaten a nice meal. I've had plenty of rest. I'm well hydrated, and I have no mental or psychological issues that I'm dealing with. So we're going to go with the assembly. In part of our assembly, we provide third-party equipment such as the Hoodman drone belt. Works very nicely around your waist, much better than a controller swinging around your neck. From here, you can quickly disconnect like this to break the receiver away from you, or the controller, I should say, and you're now able to go about your business without any encumbrance. Just put it back on, slap it in, bolt it down, you're ready to operate. We also like to use the Hoodman shield cover. This is very handy when you're flying with a tablet in a bright sky. It gives you a nice covering, so to speak, or shade for your screen so that you can see what you're looking at. And also, if you're flying with polarized glasses, get rid of them. They're worthless. You cannot fly with polarized glasses. Your screen on the tablet is polarized. It will not be beneficial for you to fly with polarized glasses. So we'll be connecting the rest of this exercise without polarized glasses. All right, so at this point now, we're going to do a deployment of our 3DR Solo. This is a rapid deployment case where you would usually have the propellers intact for rapid deployment. But in this case, we're going to be taking off or removing the manufacturer's props and using master air screws. We've also attached a alpha antenna to our controller, which will enhance this 2.4 reception, which gives us enhanced distance and digital connectivity, which is very important. And so then we'll start with the drone. We have a battery separator that we have to disengage. We don't want to engage the battery until we're ready for flight. Props going in a specific fashion. In this case, they make it rather easy for you. They have black tips and they have silver tips, which corresponds with the black and the silver on top of these 2220 motors. Makes it a little more goof-proof. In this case, when you put on the propellers, you spin them towards the leading edge of the prop, making sure that they're on there. And with this one, with drones I should say, I meant to point this out earlier, is that, alright, so for my qualification flight I'm using the 3DR Solo, and there are certain procedures you need to follow when you're assembling these. You have a checklist that'll provide you all the information and follow it and adhere to it. Alright, to begin with, we'll be removing the battery separator. This provides or prevents any unauthorized engagement of the battery into the aircraft. We're also taking off the battery gimbal protector, which saves the gimbal from bouncing around. And we'll be providing master air screw props for the aircraft. When you place these on the aircraft, you look for the black here and black here. Usually they'll have some kind of identification code on the motors to make it easy. But remember, the front blades are always coming in like this, the back blades are always going out like that. You always want the leading edge going in the direction of the spin. So in this case, we're going to put on the props, and once we've gotten the props attached, we'll hand tighten them to make sure they're snug. The camera is set. We have a controller. We're also using a tablet for this operation. It's using Solex software, and with that we will power up the aircraft. I've already powered up the tablet so that it won't take so long. Holding down the button, you get a confirmation beep. Turning on the tablet. And we'll bring up Solex software. Waiting for the two to connect. In the meantime, my visual observer and I are looking over the area to make sure it's clean from any incursions into our space that we'll be flying in, and nothing appears to be out of the ordinary. We have a north end of the field, we have one RC guy flying around, but he's a good 500 yards from where we're standing, so that should be of no consequence to us. We're pretty much all set to go. We have an emergency phone number to contact the airport in case we have a flyaway. We have cell phones to dial 911 if there's an emergency and someone has a boo-boo, and I believe we have pretty much everything intact. What we're going to be doing is some basic flight training where we'll take off, land, take off, pitch forward, come back, the basic roll, or pitch forward, pitch back. We'll do roll left, roll right, land it again. We'll then proceed to do a square dance, well, we call it a square dance, where you pitch forward, brake to the left, pitch back, brake to the right. Do that a couple times and then go in the opposite direction. At that next exercise, we'll be doing flights where we'll go forward, we'll turn the nose 90 degrees, go forward, turn the nose 90 degrees, go forward, turn the nose 90 degrees, go forward. Reverse the aircraft, reverse the operation, the mission. After that, we'll do a regular ring in both directions, maybe a figure eight, for class, and then we'll do a point of interest, and that should conclude our flight demonstration of this exercise in completing the 5U. Pat, do you have any questions on our mission at this point?
I think I'm pretty clear on it.
Very well then. Next step will be our takeoff and landing. Alright, so we're going to do our final on the pre-flight inspection. I should also mention it's important to do an in-flight inspection of a new aircraft if you've never flown before. Once you've taken it up, roll it to left, roll it to right, pitch forward, pitch back, see how it maneuvers, do a yaw, do a 360 yaw. Feel it out, see how responsive the equipment is, because not all drones act the same, and you should become aware of these kind of little subtleties in the aircraft's behavior prior to your actually conducting the mission. So in this case, we're going to be coming out here. I'm energizing the GoPro camera because I don't want to interfere with the gimbal once it's been activated, or the aircraft has been activated. And we'll set it down, engage the battery. Motors are all good. Everything is tight. Energizing the equipment. And so it's also very important to have the camera or the aircraft pointing away from when you fly, because then you won't have to deal with what we call reverse orientation. And what that requires is that if the aircraft is pointing at you, any movement you do will do the opposite effect. If you bank it to the left, it'll go to the right. If you bang it to the right, it'll go to the left. And so you have to remember that. So whenever you're doing your landing, always having the nose pointing away from you will lessen the possibility of you having an issue where some dog or a cat or a child decides to run up and grab the aircraft, and you can safely maneuver it out of harm's way and avoid any kind of issues with the individual or whatever the incursion into your airspace is. So with that, then now we're going to go into our flight demonstration. All right, so we've established connectivity between the controller and the aircraft, and between the tablet and the controller. I've got a nice display. Everything looks good. I have approximately 9 satellites, 1.09 HTOP, which is your horizontal delusion. We will then conduct a basic takeoff and landing. We have rotation, throttling up. We're doing a normal hover. And with that, now we'll just do a simple descent. All right, so that's your basic takeoff and landing. With this exercise, we'll be pitching forward, pitching back, roll left, roll right. So we've got our altitude now is about, we'll bring it down to 6 feet. We'll pitch forward, approximately 20 feet. We'll bring it back, approximately 20 feet. And so this is your basic rock motion or pitch motion. I like to call this stick rock and roll because you can rock it forward, you can rock it back, but then you can also roll it to the left, roll it to the right. So think of the stick as rock and roll. Rock forward, rock back, roll left, roll right. And that's your basics of the right stick. Your left stick primarily is your gas tank and steering wheel. When you want to give it more throttle, you give it more gas. When you want to take your foot off the gas and bring the pedal back, it'll cause it to descend. If you roll your nose left and right, the aircraft will spin in the direction of your turn. That's your steering wheel. So in this case now we're just going to do your basic square dash where we pitch forward, we roll to your left, we bring it back, and we roll to the right. Simple procedure, but basic as it is, you still need to practice it to become confident. And always see how you can see the gimbal there. That's how you can tell where the nose is. Use the landmarks on the aircraft.
Battery 58%, altitude 7.51 feet, speed 0.00 miles.
So with this next exercise now, we'll do a square with the roll and the pitch. So here's your roll. Here's your pitch, here's your roll. Then we'll go the other way, you pitch it forward, roll to the right, pitch back, and then you get to a certain level or area, pitch to the right. And that's your basic square maneuver. But you want to advance from that so that when you go forward, you want to be able to turn your nose in the direction of your travel. You're going to do a sliding turn, so to speak, kind of like a power slide. So you can either do it while the aircraft's in motion or wait till it makes a complete stop and then proceed forward. In this case, I'm choosing the latter of the two, where we go to a complete stop, turn our nose in the direction of flight, and go forward. We then will do it with the similar motions, except we're going to go in the opposite direction, where we'll go forward, or turn to the right, go forward, turn to the right, go forward, turn to the right, go forward. Now for this next one, we're just going to do a regular turn. This is when you get better, then you'll learn how to use your steering wheel. The tricky part is not doing a descent or an ascent when you're making these turns. you can tell, especially when you start doing your ring patterns, whether you start attaining any kind of altitude. And you'll want to get yourself trained so that once you get into that ring, you hold it there. You can then do your figure eight. You don't generally judge on penmanship, but you try to make it look sharp. And you work on figure eights because that's your primary movement of being able to roll left and right and getting used to the yaw and the pitch and all those things. Very important. You'll practice this a lot, but your most important maneuver is going to be your point of interest shot, or when you have a nose in orbit. And at this point I'm going to change the battery. I'm down to 42%. All right, so our battery level was going down to 50%. During your training flights, don't drain your batteries below 50%. The beauty of that is because it's a LiPo battery, if you drain it below 50%, you're harming the battery. If you don't have a smart battery on it and it's fully charged, you're hurting the battery. If you've got a smart battery, don't depend on it. Do your own thing. Make sure it gets down to about 50 or so percent. That's your storage level for LiPo batteries. Really important because you don't know the next time that battery's going to go into operation, and they can sit for years at 50% and not have a single problem until you need them. They won't have a single problem when you follow that policy. So in this case now we're going to take off again. We're going to do a point of interest. I've had to drag the mat out a little farther to give ourselves more of a space cushion. And with that now we're going to do a couple of orbits in clockwise and counterclockwise. And one of the interesting things that you're going to find out about this is that you might be able to do clockwise really well, but you're going to struggle on the opposite direction. I don't know if it's left or right brain, but I can do like a counter rotation, not a problem. Doing a normal rotation throws me off a little bit. So check it out. Do clockwise, do counterclockwise, see which way works best for you, and remember that. You don't want any surprises. So with that now, we're going to launch the aircraft. I'm going to energize it. It's energized, we're rotating, we're taking off.
Battery 9.4%, altitude minus 4.7 inches, speed 0.07 miles per hour.
Software Solex provides me audible display of, or audible interpretation of the aircraft's status, giving me altitude, giving me battery, giving me distance, giving me all the important information, how many satellites I have, my voltage, time in the air, and the speed of the aircraft. Also the type of camera. So in this case now we're going to zip out a little bit to give ourselves some distance. Do a little 180 so I can get the image in shape in camera. I have my target. I have it in the center, my crosshairs. And if it doesn't come out just in the right spot, just give it a little give it a little rock and roll, and give that crosshair centered on your point of interest. And in that case, then you break one stick to the right, you break your left stick to the left, and you will start doing your rotations. I recommend that you start off with a little bit of roll, and that way you can learn how to compensate with the rudder, and you'll figure out where that sweet spot is, and then you hold it. Because if you can hold it, you'll get a really nice shot. If you need to make little modifications with the roll, it'll be very subtle and nobody will see the difference. But the important thing is keep yourself locked into that position and you'll make a nice 360 every time. Don't take your eyes off the equipment. Keep focused. Stay on top of it. This is important. This is your most difficult maneuver that you're going to have to do. And with that, once you get your full 360 around it, try it the other way. And you'll find out whether or not you suffer from that problem of having problems with the opposite direction. So in this case now I'm going to bang my right stick to the left and my left stick to the right.
0.25 miles per hour, heading 207 degrees, signal 56%, not recorded.
And as usual, I'm having a little problem with that area still. Let me try this again. All right, let's start from the top. Clockwise is always difficult for me. I don't know why. All right, so let me get this in the picture. All right, so from the top. Do this nice and slow. You don't want fast. You want it buttery smooth. And at that point then, that's how you do it. That's how you make a full 360. This is something you're going to have to practice constantly. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. It really takes an effort to get it dialed in. But once you get it in, that's your most technically advanced shot that you'll have to do. And it's very important because you never know when you might see something. You don't want to set this up in software because by the time you get that together, you've lost the shot. You've got to be able to do this on the spot, on demand. And so practice that shot. Do that point of interest. That's your most difficult thing. Because once you got that dialed in, you're good to go. So I'm going to bring it down now for a controlled landing. And that completes it. Now the important thing when you're flying is pick out some emergency areas that you might be able to land in. If you're flying a mission or you're kind of flying all over the place, check those spots out where you can bring the aircraft down safely without causing any disturbance or causing any damage or anything like that to the aircraft or people or property. Pick out 2 or 3 spots so that you know someplace on the left side of you, someplace on the right side of you that you can bring it down if there's an emergency. If you lose connectivity, well, there's a beautiful thing called return to home or return to location. Return to home means it's going to drop down where it took off from. But if you're in a moving vehicle or something like that, you're going to want to have return to location where it'll track down your controller and bring it back to you where you can bring it down safely. If you have to, you might have to do a hand grab, which is a little bit of a risk, but if you have dogs jumping around you, you have no choice. It's something you need to learn how to do. Beware of dogs, beware of seagulls. Seagulls are territorial. Seagulls are also very aggressive, and you don't want to deal with them. If you got seagulls in the air, you have to be aware that you might have problems, and so be careful out there. If you have to get away from them, land it if you have to until they go away. Out here in Florida, we have pelicans, so they're not such an issue, but where I used to fly, yeah, it can get real ugly. Now that we've completed our mission, there's a couple other things you need to know how to do, and that's what's called a post-flight inspection. So with that, I'm going to give the controller to my visual observer. I'm going to walk over and inspect the aircraft. I'm going to de-energize the battery first, rendering it safe. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the temperature of the motors, see if they feel warm. It's a nice day, nice breeze. All motors feel the same temperature, so that's a good thing. We're going to disengage the battery because it's very important. Feel the temperature of the battery. Put it against your cheek or the back of your hand. Much more sensitive. You want to feel if that battery is getting hot or if it's gotten hotter than other batteries. The other important thing to do is look for puffiness. Check the battery. Does it feel a little squishy or something? If it does, you got a problem because that battery is going to be failing on you one day real soon. So be advised when you have a battery that's puffy on you, you're going to have to set it aside and tag it. That way it doesn't corrupt your inventory. Other than that, the aircraft is intact in one piece since there was no close encounters with stationary objects or, how can I say, gravity-assisted high-velocity disassemblies. I know everything's put together and is intact. And so with that, those are your primary things that you want to do. Make sure your camera is turned off because you don't want that running while you're taking the aircraft back. And have a good time flying. This is an amazing opportunity. Let's get out there and do something with ourselves. I'd like to thank you very much, and that completes our point of interest flight.